Hello, how's it going? In today's video, I'll be covering Domination of the Elements, the Clans United, and the Siege of Goria from Chronicle Volume 2. Just to give you guys an idea of timeline, we're currently around 400 years before the Dark Portal. So let's go! For a long time, Orcs and Ogres would have little fights over territory, but that was about it. Ogres didn't really see Orcs as a threat, and would spend most of their time in search of Apexis crystals. Orcs would also try and look for Apexis crystals, but only because they fetched a pretty ridiculous price from Ogre merchants. Ogres thought that the Orcs' practice of shamanism was kind of funny. They viewed it as a parlour trick, at best, making someone's fringe wobble a bit, or something equally as useless. Until some Ogres witnessed an Elder Shaman turn away a flash flood that would have otherwise destroyed an Orc village. Then they realised shamanism was actually quite powerful, and they decided they wanted it. But balls were they going to put any time or effort into obtaining the knowledge of shamanism? They wanted it, and they wanted it now. The Gorian leader, a sorcerer king called Imperator Moloch. Is that how you pronounce that word? Imperator? Imperator? Who knows? Anyway, he sent an army and claimed the throne of the elements for his empire. This enraged the Orc shaman, but the clans themselves weren't stirred to action. The Gorians hadn't slaughtered any Orc people, they'd just driven them away, and that's perfectly fine apparently. The Ogres dissected the throne of the elements with their spellwork. This area was already teeming with raw titan energies and elemental power. Throwing their magic into the mix ignited an explosion. The temple the Orcs had built was blown apart and destroyed. The blast killed every Gorian sorcerer inside the structure and left behind only a few standing stones. This act threw the elements out of balance on Draenor, but the Gorians didn't really seem that bothered. Moloch just sent more sorcerers. He now had proof of the true power of the elements and was determined to claim it for himself. The tormented elementals cried out to the Orc clans for help, and finally, they decided maybe they should do something. At the next Koshag festival, there was no celebration or revelry. It was the Shadow Moon shaman, Nelgarm, that made the impassioned plea for all the clans to act. The clans agreed, and Nelgarm called upon the elements to bless this unity with their protection. The Orcs marched to war as a single people. The clans first ascended on the throne of the elements. The Ogres were completely surprised by this assault and just kind of retreated, with little bloodshed. Bit of an anticlimax. But Moloch did retaliate. The armies of the Gorian Empire moved en masse, attacking and slaughtering every Orc encampment they could find. As far as the Gorians were concerned, this merciless tactic would strike terror into the hearts of their enemies. But they were bloody wrong. Small mobile groups of Orc raiders slowly dismantled the Gorian Empire's network of fortresses and trading outposts, pushing the Ogre armies back to Goria. Goria's fortifications were pretty significant. The Orcs didn't see the point in wasting lives trying to break them down, so it became a waiting game. The Orcs believed they could starve the Ogres out. The Ogres had a port and ships, and were pretty convinced they could outlast the siege. But as the months passed, the Ogres realised that trade by sea wasn't good enough. They needed their land trade routes as well, but these had been cut off by the Orcs. Moloch and his sorcerers revisited the Apexis crystals to see if they could find something that would help them break the siege. In time, they found the ancient Arakoan legend about the Curse of Seth, and they decided, let's experiment and see if we can induce a similar affliction on those Orc jerks. They succeeded. A new affliction called the Red Pox spread like wildfire amongst the Orcs. This wasting disease was highly contagious, lasted months, and was ultimately pretty fatal. The Orcs found their numbers dwindling rapidly. After consulting with the elements, Nelgarm and the other shaman learned that this was an unseen attack from the Ogres. The clan chieftains were quite concerned at this point. Looked like the Orcs weren't going to win after all. So Nelgarm and the other shaman decided to take drastic action. This was a pretty dangerous, unprecedented thing to do, but they requested the elements annihilate Goria. A roaring storm churned above the city. Over the course of a few hours, lightning and earthquakes brought down every wall and every building inside Goria. Fire enveloped the ruins, sealing off the escape routes and burning the ships in the harbour. When there was nothing left but ash and rubble, the earth itself wrenched open and just kind of swallowed the whole city. Bit of overkill, but okay. The Orcs stood victorious, but not jubilant. They'd suffered tremendous loss, but also, they'd just seen the most destructive, horrific thing ever. They definitely didn't want to see that again. The shaman declared that the need for a unified army had passed, and the clans should go their separate ways. Nobody argued with this. The clans returned to their lands, but life had changed forever. The Red Pox continued to be a threat, and every few generations an outbreak would wreak havoc. The Gorian Empire never recovered, because they were absolutely bloody terrified. This new vulnerability led to the Orcs surpassing the Ogres and becoming the most dominant race on the planet. But this was about to change, and we're leaving it there! So that was a lovely, fun story. It was kind of obvious those two races were going to come to blows at some point. There can only be one dominant species or whatever. In the next Volume 2 video, the Draenor will be arriving on Draenor. That's kind of a big deal. If you enjoyed this video, press the like button. Also, you can subscribe if you really want to. But all that's left to say is, thanks very much for watching, and see ya!